Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming on the last day. Nice and early. Today we're talking about GitOps and how to manage all of your devices in code. So quick agenda, we're going to be introduction to myself and Brock. We'll talk a little bit about GitOps and kind of like why we do it this way. And then we're actually going to do hands-on keyboard, we'll set up your repo, and then we're going to dive into actually deploying on our fleet tenant. So we'll talk a little bit about what the little strips of paper are in a bit. Yeah.
Okay, very quickly. We normally do this session. We've been dragging Harrison all over the world doing this session. The format is normally 4 hours, and the reason is because this course is advertised for beginners, and sometimes these things can be challenging. One of the most challenging things is perhaps getting your repo actually connected correctly to the fleet instance so that things actually happen. This is not that session because we only have 75 minutes today. So we've provisioned instances for everyone. Everyone who got one of these pieces of paper should have an instance that they can log into. We're going to go through the repo setup in about 15 minutes. If you get connected, you're awesome. If you don't worry about it. Just sit back and enjoy the presentation. And maybe this will entice you to attend one of the full 4-hour workshops at a location near you. So we just wanted to make sure that we got this slot kind of at the last minute. We wanted to make sure that we presented this material here. We hope that it's interesting enough to sit back and watch as a presentation if you're not participating. But we definitely want you to if you get it all working. So that's the disclaimer.
Thanks. A little bit about myself. My name is Harrison, or Harry at Fleet. I'm a solutions consultant here. I was also a former client platform engineer in corporate security and all good things IT. Before that, I kind of have an eclectic background. I work in restaurants and bakeries throughout the country, and a little bit in Europe. And then currently, big climber, big outdoorsman, love my yoga, and this is wrong. You have to explain the photo now.
I did not have a cool picture at a Vikings game to put up there, so I used this picture that Harry created this week. Apparently, he was a little shocked at my reception when I got to this conference. Maybe I'll explain it a little bit for those of you that don't know me. I worked for Jamf for about 5 years, and one of the things that I did at Jamf was deliver and create the certification classes. So I suppose I should apologize for that if you've ever taken any of those classes. But because I did that, I had probably 12 to 1,300 students. So there's a lot of people in this community that know me. I don't always remember all of them, but they tend to know me. So he thought that was pretty funny. I also have worked as a client platform engineer. I worked at Apple. I worked at Lionsgate Stars and Vanguard. I'm a recovering musician. I have too many vintage analog synthesizers and keyboards. So that's a little bit about me. Okay, so want to just talk briefly about Fleet. If you don't know about Fleet, this is a slide that we kind of put in every presentation that we give. Fleet's dedicated to openness. The product is open core based on open source code. One of the things that's interesting about that's different than maybe other MDM solutions, is that you can literally see everything we're doing. Many of you may have been in a situation where some of your users were antagonistic to having their device being managed. We think this is a pretty unique and cool response to that defense mechanism, where it's like, hey, if you're worried about what we're running on your device, you can see all the code yourself. Fleet started life as a data instrumentation platform. So when we talk about making security and IT interoperable, that's really what we're talking about. You get the best of the Fleet OS query features along with MDM features kind of built on top of those. Fleet is an API first design. That's what we mean when we talk about making automation easy. It's something that's built into the product. Basically every feature in Fleet has an API endpoint. We don't prevent you from doing things by limiting them behind buttons or the UI. We like to make things as simple and as good as possible. And then already kind of hit on this, clarity and trust through open source development is really the kind of the theme here. I want to talk a little bit about this stuff. I do a training on GitOps that is outside of this workshop, and one of the things that we like to talk about at Fleet is unpacking the why. Why do we do these things this way? I'm not going to drone on about this, but I do want to talk a little bit about it if you're wondering why we believe that managing a device management solution with code is a better way to do it maybe than the way you've been doing things yourself. One of those things is change management. I've worked in the finance industry. Change management is, in a word, hellacious. I'm sure that you have all worked or at least experienced some change management processes that were less than great. They're never fun. They sometimes involve meetings. And it's sometimes actually difficult to manage the work. If you're only dealing with a UI, sometimes the question is who checked that radio button at 3 o'clock in the morning. You have to go back and look at an access log to figure that out. If you're managing a console with code and pull requests, those things are kind of obviated. And that goes right on to the next point of accountability. Things like making sure that the configurations are immutable, talking about pull requests and peer-reviewed code, and you can also manage configuration drift. Auditability, meaning that everybody's work is out in the open. That's a super important thing, and it sounds like maybe a negative thing or a bad thing, but it's actually a good thing because it actually builds the team up and makes sure that the team is actually engaged and working together instead of having some rogue admin who doesn't necessarily work in the same location as you go into the console and change something that nobody knew about it at 3 o'clock in the morning, which, I don't know if that's happened to you guys. It's definitely happened to me. And then making the changes reversible. So when we talk about state management and rollback, sometimes if you're managing a GUI, in order to fix the bad thing you've done, you have to unclick all the clicks that you made. Unclicking all the clicks can be hard. With configuration as code, you're basically rolling back to the previous state, and theoretically that makes things easier to do. Want to talk briefly about some of the things we're going to be using today. This is really just a lexicon to make sure that we're all talking in the same language. Some of the platforms for Git repository management, things like GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, you may already be using these things. There are other ones out there. Fleet, the Fleet GitOps repo that we make available is compatible with all three of these Git repository managers. You can translate that with zero effort to, we use GitHub, but you can translate it with zero effort to GitLab and Bitbucket. Some of the repository objects, if you're not familiar with them and you haven't done this kind of work in the past, we're going to be adding secrets to the GitHub Actions section, the settings within GitHub. That is, in fact, how you connect your repo to your Fleet instance. Fleet uses YAML configurations, as lots of tools like this do. One of the objects that we'll be uploading to the repository is profiles. Fleet is a cross-platform management solution, so that means you could upload Windows CSP profiles, you can upload .mobile config, device declarative management solutions for Apple, all that stuff. At the end of the day, they're text files. Scripts, same deal. It's an object that exists in Fleet that can be managed with code, along with software. For those of you that are Jamf customers, a Fleet policy is a little different than a Jamf policy. A Jamf policy is kind of the object within Jamf that you use to create the payloads that you deliver to the devices. In Fleet, a policy is a query that assesses the state of a device. We didn't really talk about this yet, but Fleet is based on OS query. A lot of the low-level features of Fleet are predicated on that. So the policy engine allows you to create a query that generates a Boolean result, and then you can trigger an automation action based on that assessment or based on that result. So policies is another object within Fleet that you can manage with code. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about.
Great.
I'm going to turn things over to Harry.
Cool.
And just so you know, like I said, we're not gonna rush through it, but we're gonna go pretty fast through this. I'm gonna be here If you get stuck, maybe call me over. Maybe I'll be able to help. Maybe I won't. But we're not going to be stopping the presentation to get anybody unstuck. We're unyielding. Yes, Alex.
Are there any certificates given after this?
So here is what I have agreed to do. All of these instances are unique, and you have to set up your own Git repo to accomplish these tasks. If after the course you want to receive a certificate, which we've been giving out for the 4-hour workshop, a trophy, a participation trophy, we are happy to do that, but I'm going to have to verify that you've actually done the work correctly. So just let me know after the session if you want to have your repo and your fleet instance assessed, and I would be happy to give you my email address. You can send me links to all your stuff, and I will check it. And if it's good, you will receive a participation certificate, just like as if you had attended the workshop. Cool?
Sweet, let's do it. So the first thing we're going to do is set up our repository, and I'm going to walk through it quickly, but the TLDR is that we're going to create a repository in your own GitHub account, and then we're going to clone the fleet sort of starter repo that we have, and then we're going to bring that into your repository that you just created. So I'm going to kind of switch between things here. This is the kind of easiest way that have found to do it in this setting. But if you have an easier way that you're really comfortable with Git, totally chill. And then I'm also going to be using GitHub Desktop just from like a visual perspective, and you can kind of see things. But again, you can totally use just like the command line version of Git. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is go into your GitHub account, and we're going to create a new repository. So I'm going to come over to my repos, and I'm going to add a new one, and I'm just going to call it, let me just zoom in, I'm just going to call it PSU GitOps. I'm going to keep it public, skip the README, and then just create that repo. So now I have this empty repo in my GitHub account. And so, like I said, I'm using GitHub Desktop just because it's kind of easy to demonstrate and see. But basically, I'm going to come in here and refresh my repos, and then I'm going to open up that repo. So this is the one I just created. Why aren't you doing this? PSU GitOps, clone, and there we go. So that's kind of the first part that you have. So you have your remote repo that you set up, and then we're just going to clone it to your local file system. I just work out of my source folder, but again, wherever you're comfortable working out of. So now what we're going to do is basically just copy the files from the GitHub repo over to our repo itself. So we have a starter repo. I'm saying repo a lot. We have a starter repo at this link here. It's also up there, github.com/fleetdm/fleet-GitOps. And this is going to have all of like the starter code that you need to get started. It'll have all the GitHub actions and everything like that. So we need to bring that code over to our repo. So what I'm going to do is go back to my GitHub, and then I'm going to navigate over to that Fleet GitOps. And then, where do we go? That right there. Do code, and then I'm just going to download the zip. And extract it. So now I have this code that I've grabbed from our starter repo, and then I'm assuming we're all on Mac. Make sure before you do this next step that you have all of the hidden dot folders exposed. So shift command period, and that'll show you primarily we need that dot GitHub. That's where all the GitHub actions live. So make sure you're kind of revealing that before you copy it over. So now I'm going to go back to my GitHub desktop. Do this. Where's my PSU? Okay, and I'm going to clone it to there. clone, and then reveal in Finder. So basically what I'm doing here is going to copy all of the files from the downloaded code, and I'm just going to copy it over to the local copy of my version of the repository that I created. So on the right is the code that we downloaded from the starter repo, and I'm just dragging and dropping it over to the folder that I've created under version control. And so now when I go over to my GitHub repo, you can see it's saying, hey, you have 36 files to add. You might have give or take a few, given some DS store and things like that. But now that we have all of this in our repo, I'm just going to do an init.
What was the question, Alex?
Might just be a point to pause for a second.
Yeah.
And if anybody raise hands and they're just stuck, just get started.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody stuck so far on this part? Let me just publish this branch, and then we can go over it again. So publish that. Now I have my version. Then I have my version of the code in my repo that I created. So basically what we did, let me go back to here. So we created a repo in our account. Then we cloned it locally to our file system. And then we went to the Fleet starter repo, got that code, and then copied all the files from that over to our version of the repo that we have on our local file system, which is under version control. And then you see copied over, and then GitHub desktop or Git will say, hey, I have all these new files. Go ahead and just commit it, and then publish that branch. And then you have in your GitHub account and your repo the starter code that we need to get started. So we're coming back over to, there's a URL there. It's probably hard for you to see, but basically the Fleet starter repo that we have. So it's github.com/fleetdm /git or /fleet-gitops. So this guy right here. And then we're just going to go and grab the code. So the green code button, download zip, which will have all of the files. And then once we have that extracted, we're just going to copy it over to our local copy of the repo, which will then trigger all those files to be available to commit and push up to your repo.
Anybody else have any questions at this point?
You're doing that, you're using the desktop,
I'm using the desktop, but any version control that you want to use. Go ahead.
And you could also use Git on the command line if you're more comfortable doing that as well. There's no reason not to.
reason why you guys don't just fork it?
Sometimes we found a couple different things with the fork.
Yeah.
One of the things was the GitHub Actions didn't fork correctly. Yeah, there was a couple good reasons.
There was kind of some manual things that you had to do back in the settings and the secrets to get it to actually work.
Yeah.
You can easily fork the repo, but that doesn't necessarily make the entire workflow.
Yeah.
So what you're telling me is I should restart.
You can be the one that finds the problems.
I told Harry yesterday that I would be the bad cop, he would be the good cop. In 12 minutes, we're going to move on to the material, so we've got plenty of time, but at some point we won't really be able to stop too much to ask questions. Anyone else stuck? Groovy.
Shift command period. Yeah, just make sure that you do that. What did I just open? Make sure you do that before you copy the files over, because there's a hidden, the .github file that has all the actions will not copy over. So
That's one of the oldest Mac tricks in the book. Yeah.
So just to review one more time, I have my repo here in my GitHub account, and then I have the code from the GitHub starter repo that we have for Fleet at github.com /fleetdm /fleet-gitops. we give people a few more minutes, or should we just move on?
This is pretty foundational.
Yeah?
You go to place people to start actually using.
Yeah. This is the hardest part of this course, I promise.
I have a question. So I was putting everything in the desktop app
Yep.
here, but I forgot to reveal the .git
Mhm.
added in there.
Yep.
Should I start over? Is there a way to just drag it into?
You can go back and reveal the hidden folders and then just add them and do a recommit just to make sure they're in there. Yeah.
And that's the key, is that once you've added them, you just need to do another commit.
Yeah. You want to make sure that in your repo you have that .github folder at the top there, which contains all the actions. So
We are like cool on time right now. So like all of these things and all of the terms and the terminology, what did we just do? We copied some stuff from a folder. We made a copy of the folder on the internet, right? At the end of the day, that's what you're doing when you're doing this stuff.
Good to go?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so a quick kind of overview of the repo. This will make sense in a few minutes when we start actually working. But basically you have a library folder in there, which is going to have all of your items that Brock talked about. So things like configuration profiles, enrollment profiles. So you have your library, and then we have it sorted by operating system. So library macOS or library Windows. And then inside of that, we have the actual objects itself. So library macOS scripts or library macOS policies. So that's kind of how it's laid out. It's pretty flat, but that's kind of the structure. And then the other component that's really important is the teams, which you'll see kind of where they come into play in just a sec. But the teams are where you assign all these objects to. So a team is kind of like a baseline, which I'll show you in Fleet in just a sec. But there's a teams folder to which we're going to manage the teams and apply the repository objects to. So like I said, this repo starting, and then we're going to do the connection to our Fleet instance. Honestly, the hardest part. Don't get discouraged. We're here to help. And then we're going to do a couple things in code. We're going to create a team. We're going to adjust our organization settings. We're going to add some mobile configs. And we're going to do a macOS update deadline. And then we're going to add a policy and some scripts to our repo. So as we kind of go along, you're going to be building this Fleet instance. All right. Enroll secrets. So enroll secrets is just something that's going to come up kind of here at the beginning when we're initializing the repo and getting started. But basically, it's a secret that binds a host to a team. And it's really just a string that's, I think, 32 characters long is the minimum. So that's how you assign devices to a team when you're building your installer. So each team needs a unique enroll secret. So if you have 10 teams, you're going to have all those enrollment secrets. So at the baseline, there's one that we need in every configuration, and that's the Fleet global enroll secret. So that's kind of your catch-all. If you have a device and you add it to Fleet without a team, it's going to end up using that enroll secret. So we need to make sure we add that to our repo, which you'll see in just a sec.
Yeah, really.
So basically, and we'll spend the time on this to make sure everyone gets set up, but basically inside of our GitHub repo, we're going to initialize some repository secrets. And that's going to be the enroll secrets. We're going to initialize our Fleet URL and another enrollment secret, and then our API token. So these are kind of the four that you need to get started. Of course, in the wild, in your production instance, you're going to have lots of secrets, and they'll just be defined here in your repo. So I'm going to kind of pause there for a second. Any questions about kind of how that all ties together?
Instruction on the floor above us. It's not a burrito. So they're going to try to take care of that.
All right, and the reason that I have these sort of long strings next to it, that's the easiest way to do an enrollment secret, is just do 1 through 10 and then copy it and paste it a couple times to generate this unique string. And then for the other enrollment secret, I basically just do it backwards. So, copy it, paste it, and generate this. They have to be a minimum 32 characters long. So that's the easiest way that I found to kind of add it. Not production ready, but definitely easy in a workshop. Okay, so let's do a couple of these. So the 4 that we need are going to be listed here. So we need the API token, we need the fleet URL, we need our fleet global enroll secret, and we need our workstations enroll secret, which is going to be a team itself that you'll see in just a sec. So with that, kind of a side note is the little piece of paper that you have. That is your unique fleet tenant. So everyone has an instance that's spun up. You can go ahead and navigate to that URL, sign in with credentials there, and that'll drop you into your instance.
I see why, because it says let's build. That's why.
No, yeah.
The construction guy emoji is what did it. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is coming full circle here. We're literally building. So log into that fleet tenant, and what you're going to see when you log in is something that looks like this. This is a clean instance. There's no teams. There's nothing in here. And if you have any issues logging in, just let me know. But no. So now we have this tenant here, and now we need to add a couple of these components to our repo. So the first thing we're going to add is our fleet API token. And this is, again, just a variable. It's a secret defined in our repo. And so what that looks like is if we come over to our repo itself. So again, I'm out of this repo that I'm working out of. Go to settings and scroll down to secrets and variables, actions, repository secrets. So everything you put in here is made available to your repo. So the first one that we need to add is our fleet underscore API underscore token, just like that. So that'll be the first secret that we're adding to our repo. And then the way you grab this token is inside of your fleet instance. You're going to click on the little emoji on the top right, and you'll click My Account. You'll generate an API token, and that's going to be the one that you are going to use in this field here. So I'll do it real quick. I'm going to our fleet tenant. I'll click on my little emoji, My Account, get token, and it's right here. And I'm just going to copy that and then add it to my secret.
Can you see how many tokens have been created? Seems like once you've created, it just...
That is correct.
Yeah.
Like once that's intentional.
Okay.
That like you're not supposed to be able to reveal them once they've been added. You can be assured that when you add a new one, it will be overwritten, but you'll never be able to reveal them again. And that's by design.
So that's our first secret that we have. So fleet underscore API underscore token, added as a repository secret, which is going to help do all of our GitHub actions and do the apply. So that's the first one that we have. And then the next one we need to add is our actual fleet URL. So this is considered another repository secret. So I'm going to add this in all caps on these, fleet underscore URL. And that's just going to be the URL that's on the piece of paper that you have there. So for me, it's going to be this one here. I'll show you in just a sec. And then when you paste in GitHub, I don't know why it does this, it automatically appends a slash or in there. Make sure you remove that before you save it. It causes more problems than it should. So just make sure you escape it out.
And this is really an artifact of the Mac, right? It's trying to help you whenever you paste a URL anywhere. It's assuming that you need the trailing slash. In this case, if you leave that trailing slash, you would end up with 2 forward slashes in every URL that was trying to be passed by GitHub, which obviously doesn't work.
Is that a bug or a feature that we should fix?
Feature.
Yeah.
That is a bug.
So just make sure you're doing the HTTPS all the way up to the .com, and before you save it, no forward slash in there. So I'm going to hit add secret. So now in my repo that I'm working out of, I have 2, right? I have the token that I just added, API token, and then I have our fleet URL in there as well. Any questions so far about that? Sweet. All right. Almost done with the hard part. So now we need to add the 2 enrollment secrets. So the first one that we're going to add is the global enroll secret. So we're going to go back over to our repo, and it's just all caps fleet underscore global enroll secret. Fleet global enroll secret. Yep, cool. And then again, the easiest way to do this for the first one is just I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm just going to copy it and paste it twice. It has to be a minimum of 32 characters, and then you can just add that like that.
And I guess I just want to point one thing out here, which is that this is a feature that's unique to Fleet, right? This is not something that's universal about GitOps. The enrollment secrets are just a string that identifies the teams in Fleet. So that's the reason we have to add these. Security.
Yeah.
Is the
That's always just the
does
baseline
making it
answer.
longer make it more secure? Debatable, but yeah.
So we have our Fleet global enroll secret. That's going to be kind of our catch-all enrollment secret. And then we have one more we need to add, and then we can start doing actual fun things. And this is going to be one more enrollment secret. So that's Fleet underscore workstations. I think workstations, yeah. Enroll secret. And the workstations is just because that's the name of the team that we have by default in the starter repo. It can totally be, if you create a new team and you call it, engineering, it can be, have that name. But if you're kind of using the starter repo out of the box, it's going to have this workstations enroll secret needed in the first sort of run. So they all have to be unique for each tenant. So instead of doing 1 through 10, I'm going to do 10 through 9, 8, 7, 6. And then I'm just going to copy it and paste it a couple times.
You're amazing at counting.
We'll see if it applies correctly, then we'll know. So we have 4 repository secrets that we need to kind of move on to the next step. We have our Fleet API token that we grabbed from our URL or from our tenant. We have the Fleet URL with the no / before you saved it. And then we added 2 enrollment secrets, Fleet global enroll secret and Fleet workstations enroll secret. So let's make sure that we are all here, all good. Does anyone have any questions about how we ended up here?
Not metaphysically speaking, of course.
Is it because you forked the repo? Is that no?
I don't know if anything's wrong yet, but can you use Fleet control to generate those enrollment secrets, or just do what you want to make those?
I don't think you can use Fleet control
To make a new team, I guess if you made a new
yeah.
team, then one would be generated theoretically. Yeah.
In the real world, you guys just like RNG those secrets then generally? Can they be alphanumeric, or they have to be numeric?
Both.
Yeah, I think they can be anything you actually want.
Yeah.
Just do a 32 character one password.
Yeah, basically.
Yep.
Up to 255, but cool. So now we're all here. We have our repository secrets initialized, and we can kind of do our first test if everything is working out correctly. Is we can go over to our actions tab, and then we can actually trigger the apply, the GitHub apply, to apply the latest configuration to Fleet. So this first one failed because there was no secrets initialized. But now if we come into the actions, and then on the left side, if you just click on the action called apply latest configuration to Fleet, click run workflow, and then give it a sec, and it'll start running through the GitHub action that actually does the apply to our tenant. It'll take just a few seconds. We'll cover off kind of at the end what this is actually doing, and it failed. Great.
And really quickly, just I was reminded about the catch box. Sorry about that. So the questions get recorded. The questions that were asked were, what are the requirements for the strings that are used as the enrollment secrets? They can be alphanumeric, and I think they can be longer than the minimum length. So I just want to make sure that got recorded.
Yeah. Environment secret doesn't keep getting an ASCII string value.
Let's take a look. Go over to. Oh, is it because? Check one thing here. Oh, interesting. I think it's because there's a team already in there called Workstations Canary.
In the default YAML?
Yeah. We can either add the secret or we can just use this to remove the team.
I would remove the team.
Remove the
and
team?
see if that
Okay.
works.
All right. So let's take a little side detour for a second and do our first Git action. Basically, what is happening here is because there's another team in the starter repo that we haven't initialized the token for. So we kind of have two options. We can either add the other enrollment secret to create the team, or we can just remove that team from our repo, which is going to be kind of the easiest thing. So what I'm going to do here is go over to my code editor, open Visual Code, got that. So let me just zoom in, close the Copilot. All right, so this is going to be your repo that we have cloned locally. And what I'm just going to do is open up the teams folder, and then I'm just going to remove this workstations-canary. Again, this is kind of one of the teams that's created in the starter repo, just as like a template. But in here, we're just going to go ahead and delete it, move to trash, and then now GitHub or Git's going to say, hey, you removed a file, to be expected. I'm going to use just the default sort of commit message, commit to main, then push to origin. And by default, whenever you push to main, the GitHub action will run. So you can totally change this if you'd like, but anytime you push to main, it will kick off that apply action. So you won't need to go in there and manually do the apply. So we removed that team, and now let's go over to our runner, actions, and there we go. So that should fix all of the issues. So you'll get a green check mark after we removed the team because it was missing a secret. And now all good to go. You'll see a green check mark there. And then the way you can also kind of verify this is if you go into your fleet tenant itself and you kind of do a refresh, you'll see now that you have a team called Workstations, which is the one we just added. So if you hop into the Workstations team, you'll see that was created and added from the file. Any questions so far?
We don't have to rerun the apply configuration fleet.
If you push to main, you don't need to rerun it manually. It'll trigger it off, yeah. Yeah, it triggers when you push to main. If you do it manually, trigger. Or if you create a pull request, it will also trigger it, but it does it in dry run mode, which will just validate the config. So those are the three ways.
And just for the recording, the question there was, do you need to apply the change? You don't if you're pushing to main. I want to say one thing about that, which is typically in a production environment, we're a little bit in la la land here, where we're just, hey, just YOLO, push it to main. You probably wouldn't do that in real life. You would probably be doing this with a pull request, but that would complicate the workflow for the demonstrations.
So just to recap, we removed that team that was causing the issues. We pushed to main, which triggered off our GitHub apply action. And now we got green check marks in the apply. Oops. This is all good. And then you come back to your fleet tenant that you have there. You do a refresh, and now you'll see a team was added because we added that YAML file. Any questions about that? Anyone stuck? Lovely.
Excellent. You guys are awesome.
Yeah.
If you got through that, the rest is just adding stuff to fleet. So
good work. All right. So now we'll actually talk about things that we can do. So teams, we just talked about. our like baselines in Fleet, and I'll show you what they look like. So this here is our internal instance of Fleet that we manage all of our devices and test devices in. It's called dog food. And you can kind of see we have all different operating systems installed, and we have multiple teams here. So we have the workstations team, but then we also have it segregated by mobile devices. We have some servers, some test things like that. So this is where the teams kind of show up. And teams are just a logical segmentation of devices where you're applying a baseline. So you're applying, mobile configs, you're applying software and queries and policies and all that kind of stuff. And that gets applied at the team level. So that's where you're kind of segmenting your devices for your organizational needs.
Our model is typically to have a team be cross-platform, meaning there's a checkbox for enabling disk encryption. If you check that one checkbox, you will be enabling disk encryption for Windows and for Mac. You don't have to organize it that way. You can use teams to model your organization. If you want to keep devices segmented by platform, you can totally do that. Team is just kind of the top level OU, if you will. Alex.
And a couple of things about the teams right here. Some of our customers use teams for their deployment rings. So if you have we talk about the Canary team here. We have one customer that has like 5 different deployment rings. So as you are going to bigger and bigger groups of computers across the company, that's what they use it for. The second thing about teams is role-based access. So if you have a large team of admins, sorry to use the word team for multiple reasons here, but if you have a large number of admins, or if you support different companies, then you can have role-based access per team. And there's about 5 or 6 different roles predefined.
Yeah, 5 or 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. So that's what teams look like in the UI in Fleet. So kind of what I just talked about, right? You can apply certain things to it. You apply your policies, your queries, all of your controls. This is all of your MDM things, configuration profiles, updates, settings, things like that. You can also apply the software to it in a couple different ways. And then there's this concept of team settings, which we don't really get into, but it's more specific like organizational settings that apply just to one team. So if you had like a specific integration with something that you wanted to tie in or a webhook, you can do that at the team level. So that's kind of what it looks like. Here is kind of the base configuration that you could apply. There's nothing to it. It's called no team. But this is the base that you need in order to like do a deployment. It's looking for these keys. But more so, you'll have a kind of a team that'll look like that. So you have the policies applied to it, the queries. You can see the controls there. We just started deploying some scripts. So your team will look more like this with objects assigned to it.
And one thing to point out there, I guess, if you go back to that slide really quickly, you'll notice that inside the script key value, that is a YAML array. So that's the typical pattern that you'll see for multiple things, multiple objects inside of one of the top level objects.
I learned that the hard way. Cool. So we're going to kind of take a shortcut here, but we're going to create a team. The reason it's a shortcut is because if you were to actually to create another team, you have to go in and create a new repository secret and initialize that in the environment variable. It's not that hard, but from for this course, we're just going to kind of do a shortcut, which is just going to be, we're going to rename the pre-existing team, so you can kind of see what that looks like. So let's do it. If we go into our code here, and I'm just going to zoom in again. So we have, remember, our teams folder here, and then we just have this one team, workstations.yaml. So if we were to create a new team, what I would do is copy this file and then add it. But for the demonstration here, let's just go ahead and rename this to something like, we'll just call it engineering. Sure, engineering workstations. I'm going to keep the name of the file the same, but just want to demonstrate that you can rename a team like this. So we'll treat this as like creating a new team. So once we added that name or edit it, we'll go back into GitHub and it'll say, oh, you made a change here. And then I'm just going to make a commit message, update team name. commit it to main, and then push it, which will then trigger that GitHub action to run. And what's going to happen is it's going to update that team name. So if we go back over to our trusty runner, and we go to actions, you can see it's running. It does the first kind of dry run to validate the configuration that it actually does the apply. So it's running. You got to see all the things that it's doing if you click into it. And that is going to give me a green check mark. And then, so how do you see this in the UI? If you go back to your fleet instance and you do a refresh, that team that we had that was workstations is now engineering workstations. So again, we just have one team still. Of course, you can create many, many teams. I can show you how to do it at the end if you're curious. But for this sake, we're just going to rename a team and create it like we're creating it. So any questions about that? Sweet. Did I miss anything?
No.
Great.
The name of the YAML file is kind of irrelevant. It's really just what the.
It's just that the file can be independently named. If you look at our starter repo and if you look at our production repo that we actually use for the instance Harrison's showing you of Fleet, it's cleaner to have the files named sensibly in a way that matches the team names. And by the way, the question was, do the
We'll figure it out.
names of the YAML files need to match the actual team names that you use as the value in the key value? The answer is no.
So organization settings is another thing that you can manage all in code. So in Fleet UI, it'll look something like, if we go over to our, I'm going to go back to dog food just because it's actually built out. But if you come into settings, you'll see all sorts of things like organization info. This is where you can do single sign-on. You can do all of your webhooks and integrations here. So basically anything that is organization, you can manage in code, which is what we're going to do right now. Kind of what I just talked about, everything that you can kind of do in here, primarily single sign-on, a lot of folks do. All of your integrations and webhooks, all of your branding, things like that are all going to be considered organization settings. And you'll see there's a key in one of our team files called org settings, and it's going to have all sorts of things in there. So the example that we're going to do right now is just do an organization name update. So by default, it's just Fleet, but let's update it to something like Penn State Berkey Creamery. So let's do it. So we're going to go back to our code, and kind of two things I want to point out is this outside of the teams folder at the main level, the root level, is this default.yaml. And this is where I would recommend you put your team settings. You can totally add it to a team if you'd like something like workstations, but those are a little more, or can be more ephemeral. So it's better if you have this org settings that are set in default.yaml. And you can kind of see it starts here. And of course, you can only have one org settings key in each instance. So if you were to kind of add another org settings to workstations team, it's going to fail.
And just really quickly on that, we've recently added a feature. When we started doing this workshop, there wasn't really a good way of outputting your current Fleet state as YAML other than just kind of like manually doing it. There are some of our customers that had created custom solutions for doing that. But very recently, we've added this feature in the Fleet CTL binary called generate GitOps. And because often the question was, how do I start with this? Do I have to create all the configurations manually? Now you don't. So if you use this generate GitOps command, what it will do is take the current state of your Fleet instance, dump all those files out into a folder on your desktop, and then you have your starter YAML to manage, which is a really nice and helpful feature. And if you want to start with literally our production files, you can do that.
I think did I add the slide for generate GitOps at the end? I think I did.
Okay, cool.
All right, so let's update the org settings here. So we're going to be working out of this default.yaml, and there's a key called org info, which is under org settings. And by default, the name is just Fleet. But let's name it something else. I'm going to do Penn State Creamery, but you can totally do whatever you like. I'm just going to name Penn State. And I also learned recently that you can use emojis here. So I'm going to do that.
But should you?
Yeah, definitely.
The old man strikes again.
Construction hat worker.
So the change that we made here is just updating the org name. And we're going to save that, and then we're going to go back to our version control, and you can see the change was made. I'm going to make a commit message for my team, update org name, commit that to main, and then push it. And again, that'll trigger off the action that does the apply. So we'll go back over to our GitHub action. Should be running, update org name. And if you kind of head into here and click, you can see all sorts of the fun things that are running, and it's applied, green check mark. So where do you see this? Go back into your Fleet instance itself, and then we're going to go to settings. And if you scroll down under org settings, you will see now that the organization name has been updated, and that's that. Any questions about that? Cool. Did I miss anything?
Other than, this is a very trivial example, right? Obviously, you can control the very important settings in the console with the org settings. This is just happens to be a very trivial, easy example to show.
All right. So that's org settings. All right, controls, which is all of your MDM components. So what that looks like in Fleet is, let me go back to here. Again, we're back in dog food. I'm going to go over to my controls section, and I'm going to just use our Workstations Canary test team. And you can see there's kind of 4 components of controls. You have your updates section, all of your OS settings, which are going to be all of your configuration profiles, all of your setup experience, so how you want to, out of the box from automatic device enrollment, and all the different actions that you can take, and any scripts that you've added to this team, which you can use in a various different ways in the platform. You can do it ad hoc runs of scripts on groups of hosts, or you can use it in a policy automation, but the scripts live under the controls tab. So what we're going to do today is we're going to add a mobile config, but then we're also going to update the OS deadline. So right now it's set to 15.5, and we've got a deadline there, and we're going to update that in code, and then we're also going to apply a mobile config to disable Bluetooth file sharing.
And just to be clear about what this is, we do use DDM under the hood. This is one of the places in Fleet where there's kind of a pre-populated profile that's being delivered in the background. So what we're doing is adjusting the values of that with these settings.
It looks like you have nudge when
We used to, so the question was, it looks like nudge. We actually used to have nudge kind of built into the product this way, and that has been replaced with Apple's DDM.
Except if you're on an old version of the OS, we still use nudge.
Yep.
Cool. Let's take a look. So again, all of your MDM components here, configuration profiles, deadlines, disk encryption, setup experience, all of those things can be configured in code. And we separate it by operating system. So it'll be like controls is the high level, and then there's going to be Mac OS settings, and then another section for Windows settings. And we didn't cover it off quite yet, but there's this concept of labels, which are further ways to kind of scope and apply things to devices. And so you can use labels to scope things like configuration profiles. Again, all in code.
And for those of you that are coming from Jamf or have used Jamf, I would say the closest analog would be static or smart group. Labels can be either an arbitrary list of devices that you've created manually, that's a manual label, or a dynamic label, which is a query that does an assessment of the state of the device. If the device matches that query, then it would be assigned to that label. That would be equivalent to something like a smart group.
While we're here. If you haven't seen the labels and the queries, if you haven't used OS Query, basically all your extension attributes are already built out in OS Query. So Harry's got some examples of things that you would do with extension attributes that are lines and lines and lines long that you have to build out versus just a simple SQL statement to get that same data that's already there in OS Query.
I can show you, my colleague and I have a repo where we do a conversion of here's the extension attribute and then here's the equivalent in OS Query. So I can show you that after if you'd like. And then here's an example of a built out team with many different controls. So you can see we have Mac OS settings, we have some updates, we have some Windows settings, things like that. So this is what it'll look like. And what we're going to do today is we're going to do two things. We're going to add a mobile config, which will disable Bluetooth file sharing. And then we're also going to set a deadline for Mac OS. I'm going to say 15.5.1 by July 30th. So let's do it in code. So at the team level, we have our workstations YAML, and we're going to add a couple different things. So for mobile configs and profiles, it's under the controls section, and then nested in there is our macOS settings. And then inside of that is, we call it custom settings, which is really just configuration profiles. So controls at the top level, we break it down by operating system, so Mac OS settings, and then custom settings is where you deploy your configuration profiles. And the configuration profile that we're applying is already in kind of in the repo itself. So if you look at the library items, where kind of all of the components go, and you go to Mac OS configuration profiles, you'll see disable Bluetooth file sharing. So I've already added it to the repo, but if you were going to add one, of course you'd have to add to the library, the asset itself, and you would call that in the team. But for this course, we just kind of added it already. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy the path, and then I'm going to add it to the custom settings section. So we got path, again, it's an array, and then paste that in. Oh, I copied the full path, not the relative path, like that. So macOS settings, custom settings for your configuration profile, and then the one that we're going to define is this disable Bluetooth file sharing dot mobile config, and that's going to go under the custom settings. Any questions about that? Sweet.
Clone my theme on, but I don't see that config profile in your library.
Library macOS configuration profiles?
That's okay, though, I'll figure it out.
Do you see the Bluetooth or the passcode one?
Nope,
Did you download the zip file?
I did. That's okay, I will figure it out.
Okay. So we have the mobile config, and then we're also going to just update our update deadline. So it's going to be, again, under the controls tab. It's a new key called macOS updates. And then there's two sort of sub keys. We have the deadline. And it's kind of got to be in this format. I forget what they officially call it, but 2025-07-30.
I believe it's RFC 1813 or something like that, which is the best, the only acceptable date time format.
Yeah, and so if you have like a month like July, it has to be 07. It can't just be 7. So just be aware of that. It'll cause some issues. So we have deadline, and then we have another key called minimum version. And what do we say? 15.5.1? Just like that. Oops. So we did a couple things, right? We added a mobile config, and then we added the updates, which is just comprised of 2 components: the deadline that we want to enforce, and then the minimum version. So we've defined that there. We're going to save that, and of course we're applying this all to the engineering workstations team. And then you can view it in Git, right? You can see the different changes that you made to this specific team. Everything that we just reviewed there. And then my commit message is going to be add mobile config, update deadline. I'm going to commit one file to main, and then push it, which will trigger the action.
And all this could be done from the GUI as well, correct?
Sure.
Yeah.
There is an important thing to say about that, though, which is that if you're using GitOps, I'll just tell the story. The first time I uploaded a Fleet script to our production instance, I was very shocked to learn that my script was gone the next day. And the reason is because we do a Git push every day. It's going to overwrite anything that's in the GUI. Many of our customers who are using GitOps don't use the GUI. They only do this. We, in fact, have a GitOps mode, which effectively makes the GUI read-only.
Yep.
And that's kind of the solution for now. I think there will be this generate GitOps command that I was talking about before is kind of the first feature in a number of features that will come that will allow kind of a hybrid use case where you can use the GUI and use GitOps together. That kind of doesn't exist yet, but that's kind of where we're headed. Good question.
That's coming 1st of September, by the way.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Someone is going to reach out on September 1st.
That wasn't part of the recording.
Yeah, it's true.
Jason at fleetdm.com.
So we did our apply, we got our green check mark, and then we can see in the UI where this is reflected. So if we go back to our Fleet instance, I'm going to do a refresh, and you'll see it in engineering workstations. And if you scroll down, it just shows there's no version detected because there's no host enrolled here. But you'll see the target is 15.5.1 with a deadline of July 30th.
Bad cop checking in here again.
Mm-hmm.
We're at about 12 minutes. We had hoped to save some time for questions, but you guys have been asking questions interactively, which is awesome. Up to you if you want to keep going through exercises or pause. I say we keep chugging along.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we have like one more. Actually.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
So the update there, and then we can see the OS setting that we applied, which is that mobile config. So we'll go to OS settings, custom settings, and you can see there the disable Bluetooth file sharing profile is now added to this team. Any questions about that? Awesome. And if I had some hosts enrolled, of course, you would see the status of that deployment of the configuration profile up top here as it kind of makes its way and deploys and verifies.
And one thing that's kind of cool about that is that we do have kind of a double verification that happens with profiles that get delivered. There's an OS query check that happens along with the acknowledgement of the MDM command having been delivered. So that's a pretty cool feature.
That's controls. And then the kind of last hands-on part that we'll cover off is policies and scripts. And I'll show you what that looks like in Fleet itself. So I'm going to go back to dog food here, and we have policies. So as Brock was mentioning earlier, policies are written in OS query, and they're kind of just you're defining a state and you're checking the state. Your devices will check in, you're asking a question about it, and then it's giving you a response, yes or no. So for example, if I look at, is Slack up to date? You can see it's a query. We're looking at the apps table, and we're just checking for a minimum version against the bundle short version. So anytime the device will check in, it'll run the policy. Again, policies are applied to the team, and then it'll give you a status, yes or no. And then from that, what?
It defaults hourly that it runs.
Yeah, yeah.
Not the 10-second check-in.
No. You could change it if you wanted.
Yeah, that is a configurable
yeah.
value.
And then from there, you can manage your automation. So the hosts are reporting as no, and you want to do something about it. You can, run a script, or you can install software, or you can fire a webhook, or create a ticket in your ITSM. We also have an interesting feature where you can schedule calendar events for end users. So, if you don't want to do an action right then, you can go into the user's calendar, well, Fleet will, and you can add sort of a scheduled maintenance. And then the users also have the ability to move this around, and it will be reflected in Fleet.
So this is a deferral mechanism for,
Yeah.
for the action.
Yeah.
Is the version number static? I have to go and edit it and there's a new version of Slack, or do you have any automation to do?
So that's a good question. The question was, is the version number static? You can, there are some examples that have been created by Harrison and Alan, who's also on the solutions consulting team, where we are actually automating the version number update based on some version of something out in the internet, right? So it's like if application X version number has ticked up, we're watching that with a GitHub action. That GitHub action will trigger a pull request. When the pull request is approved, that will trigger the change to the version number in the policy. So you really can get some, I'm not going to say that it's monkey complete or equivalent, but you can get very, very similar behavior to something like installer mater or monkey just with GitOps actions in Fleet, which is pretty cool. And that's what we do internally for a lot of the apps that we have installed on our computers that we use. Great question.
Okay, policies and scripts. So I kind of tie these together into this section, but basically you have your policies we just covered off, and you have the flexible remediation options on those policies. So like I said, you can install software, you can run a script, things like that. You can target them by operating system. So if you have a policy you want to create and you only want to target your Linux machines, totally possible. And then you can make your remediation steps or anything you want to display to your end users. You can do that in Fleet Desktop, which I'll show you in a sec. But if you kind of want to have your end users go in and do an action, you can define that in the policy as well. And this is what the policy looks like in YAML. So again, this is a upgrade or update sort of check, and it's a query. We're just doing a select one from apps, looking for bundle short version. And then you can see, for example, we've included things like the resolution steps and platform if you wanted to specify that OS. This is kind of what it's gonna look like. And then at the bottom there, it's giving the install software. So this policy fails. The action that I want to run is install software, and it's pointing to software piece or component that's in our library item. So to install the Firefox latest version. So what we're going to do real quick is add a policy to a team, and then we're going to add a run script remediation to it. So the policy is already built, the script is already built, they're all in the library. But what we're going to say is the policy is going to look at the DNS resolvers table. If it's not pointing to Cloudflare, then run a script, which will point the DNS to Cloudflare and bring it back into your desired state. So do it quickly here. So again, all the files that you needed are inside the library item themselves. I'm just going to call them at the team. So library, macOS, you see the policies, and then we have this policy, DNS resolvers policy. Super simple query, just checking for an address against the DNS resolvers table. And so we want to add the action to this. So you could do install software or one of the actions, but in here we're going to do run script, and it's going to be this script that we have already in our library, the set DNS Cloudflare shell script. The thing to note is that when you call paths, they're relative to the file that's referring to them. So it's kind of hard to explain without, I'll just kind of show you, but basically this policy is running from a policies folder. So in order to grab the script, you need to go out of the policy folder into the scripts folder. So the path that we actually need to use is something like library, or not library, the scripts set Cloudflare DNS. So we're just going up one level out of the policies folder into.
And this is the kind of place where it can really start messing with your head. But the thing to remember is that you're talking about a folder that exists within the file system of the repo itself. And as long as you keep that straight, it starts to become kind of a magical way to do things. And I also think that once you're adding scripts in like this kind of way, the maintenance of doing it is very low once you've got the structure of the repo figured out.
I think that's correct. Find out in a second. So we added that remediation to the policy, and then we're going to assign this to the team itself. So we're going to go over to our workstations. We have a subsection for policies, and we're basically just going to assign that policies file. So we're going to see here, policies, resolvers. I'm going to copy the path to it, and it's like that. So now we're assigning this policy to this team. There's one more step that you need to do when you have a remediation that's a script, and that is to assign the script to the team as well. So we have a remediation, in this case, the set DNS shell script, and we need to make it available to the team because the policy is running at the team level. So what that looks like is coming into your control section under scripts and adding that same shell script, set DNS Cloudflare, but the path is going to be different than that of the one you called from the policies file because it's at a different point in the file system.
And the reason for this is that teams, being the top level organizational unit in the product, each team can have its own unique set of controls. We actually have customers that use Fleet in kind of a multi-tenant model where they have each team, like a managed service provider or something like that, and they have each of their customers in a separate team. So the divisions are actually that strong, I guess would be one way to say it, that you can use Fleet that way, separate controls for each team.
Yep. So I saved it, made a commit, and then just a few minutes left. I'm going to let that run. So basically we just assigned the policy. Oh, what did I do wrong?
Got 120 seconds to figure it out. So yes,
Is there any notion,
it's a long toss. I'm afraid of hitting your water bottle. I'll just repeat your question.
is there any notion like in Jamf where you can just run a command rather than pointing to a script?
Great question. There is, so like you're talking about like the files,
Yeah, so it's a simple one-liner fix.
there is not. That feature is like, that's one of the payload tabs in the Jamf policy. There is not really an equivalent feature like that in Fleet. Running a script would be the way. We're actually at the end. We are happy to stay here and ask questions. I do want to say this thing about the checking the repo. My email address is Brock, B-R-O-C-K, @fleetdm.com. Send me, if you want to have your instance assessed, send me exactly what it says on your little piece of fettuccine, and I will check your instance. And if it matches what we did here in the workshop, you will receive a participation certificate. Thank you so much for up until I've checked them. Yeah. So thanks everyone so much for coming. Appreciate it.
I figured it out.